this is going to be the last video I do specifically about the Arc of Attrition 2025. Doesn't mean it's the last Arc of Attrition I'm going to be doing. When I start training for next year's, I'll no doubt come back to this topic. But I thought I'd do a little bit of a post-race debrief. So in this video, I'm going to talk about my preparation going into the Arc, my thoughts on the race itself, and the organisation, the way it was organised, and I'll give a few thoughts at the end. I also want to talk about some of the negative comments that have been flashing around social media about the race. Before that though, I am trying to grow this channel, so if you'd be so kind as to give me a sub, they are free, and if you like the video, hit like. If you didn't like the video, drop me a comment to tell me what you'd improve. Yeah, let's get into it. I signed up for the race mainly because I think I needed something a bit more to sort of push myself. I've done a few half marathons, and the distance, I've still got some goals for the half marathon, some time goals, but the distance just isn't challenging anymore. And I wanted to challenge myself a bit more. Regular marathon, I can go and do that anytime. I can just go and run 26 miles on the road anytime I like. So I wanted something a bit more challenging, a bit more technical. And I'd been looking at ultras and trail ultras for quite a while, and then Arc of Attrition put out a 25 miler, so I thought, yes, this is the one. So I signed up for it, not really knowing anything. I'd followed a few training plans before, not really had a lot of success with them, and mainly because I didn't really know what I was doing. I didn't know what the training was supposed to be targeting. So I grabbed some books by different coaches, different ultra runners, and just read as much as I could. Found some techniques, some training, learnt about race specific training. So I guess in the past I just thought like gone out and you hear things like interval training and fartleks and stuff like that. I didn't really know what they were, didn't know what they were supposed to be targeting, didn't know whether I was supposed to be doing them, so I didn't know whether they was going to be useful or not. And then I read all these different coaches and sort of realised that this type of race, it's not a speed race. There's no point doing speed training for this type of race. It's an endurance race, so lots and lots of base running. It's also a strength race, so a lot of strength training. Probably need to do more of that, particularly towards the end of the race when you've got a lot of steep climbs. That's when you really feel it in your legs. That slowed me down quite a lot, those climbs at the end, and they shouldn't have. And also nutrition, eating when you're running is much harder than I thought it was going to be. Preparation, getting kit was a big one. I have a lot of sort of crossover kits. I do wild camping, so I already had a lot of things like emergency bivvies, whistles, compasses, that kind of thing. But there was still a lot of stuff that I had to buy specifically for this race, which I hadn't really thought about before. There was a lot of confusion online, I think, probably from people that were doing it for the first time like myself, because the kit list is pretty specific, and the penalty, if you like, for getting the kit wrong was also quite specific. Basically, you couldn't race if you didn't have the requirements that they met. And if you've never done this before, they're talking about weights of clothing and acceptable materials for various bits of clothing. If you've not done this kind of thing before, that can get quite confusing. How are you supposed to know if your waterproof jacket that you've been using for years in all sorts of weather has a 10,000mm hydrostatic head? You're not going to know that. And then if you go out and you start Googling clothes that have this, it'll point you towards clothing that costs hundreds and hundreds of pounds. And this might be the first time that you've ever done it, and it might be the only time you ever do it. So you're really going to want to spend that kind of money on that level of equipment. So there's a lot of confusion around equipment. Muddled our way through it, and on the day of the kit check, the only things they really looked at closely was that equipment that's going to save your life. So your waterproof jacket, make sure it was fully waterproof, make sure it had tape seams. Nobody was checking the hydrostatic head. Your warm layers, so this was my warm layer that I took, so they had a quick check on that. They're not weighing it, they're not going to see whether you actually meet that weight requirement. So yeah, so kit check went actually really quick and really well, very easy. Wasn't really there for more than about 20 minutes, even though it was quite busy. Then we get to the race day. Now, I thought it was really well organised. We turned up at the Eco Park and it was busy, but it wasn't overly crowded. So we were running in 3 waves. The 50 milers had already been and gone, so they were running on the same day, but they were leaving much earlier, so they left and probably, yeah, they'd already started their run by the time we got to the eco park. And then there was plenty of space for the 3 waves that were running. They've obviously been in wave 3, you are standing around a bit longer than the wave 2 and the wave 1 runners. They go out much earlier because they're running an hour before you. But again, it wasn't that bad. There was places to get a hot drink, there was places where you could go and stand inside and keep relatively warm if you needed to. Onto the coaches nice and quick at the start point. Again, very well organised, I thought. There was plenty of toilets, although when we first got there was immediately a queue for the toilet. Whether that was people about to start wave 2 or people just getting off the bus for wave 3, I don't know, but it didn't last long. The queue was probably maybe there for about 10 minutes and then it just died off, and there was no queuing for the toilets. There was plenty of them. The race itself, wow, what an experience. I absolutely loved it. It was harder than I thought it was going to be. The terrain was much tougher. I'm glad I did the training I did. I'll spin the camera around in a minute and just show you. This is one of my training grounds. Let's try to do it now. So this is one of the areas I train in, and you can see over there the conditions that we're running in, and that's pretty fairly comparable to the conditions on the day on the coastal path. So I didn't have a massive problem with that. Sand I hate, absolutely hate running on sand. I think most people do, but you know that's a big part of that section of the course. Running on the roads, again, if you've got trail shoes, they're not really designed, they don't have the cushioning that you need for sort of that hard pavement. So I would say if you're doing the 25, you need to look at a shoe that's got a bit more cushioning, because there's a lot of hard surface running on there. I think when you leave Hale, or when you're running out towards Hale, there's quite a long section of road, and my feet felt bruised by the time I got to the sand dunes. Up onto the hills, I actually really enjoyed that. Once we got up onto the mountains, it was up onto the cliff top, it was much more like the sort of train I've been running on, so I was absolutely loving that. As I say, could have done with a bit more strength training for those uphill bits towards the end. What was next? Yeah, at the end of the race, again, really enjoyed it. You come over the finish line, it's dark by then. You do need to make sure that your head torches are fully functioning, because you will be running in the dark unless you are an elite runner. After the race, again, the only slight moan I've got about after the race, and it sort of goes back to some of the chatter that was going on online before the race. There's a lot of people that were doing the race, and they were talking and they were saying, "Oh, I'm only doing the 25, or it's just the 25." And I think one of the organisers said, "Please stop saying it's just the 25. It's a great achievement, you know." And I agree, it is. It's a fantastic achievement. Just to complete that race it's immense. However, when I crossed the line, I felt like I'd just completed the 25 and I'd only done the 25. And the reason I felt like that is, as I crossed the line, nobody paid any attention to me whatsoever. I don't need attention, but it would have been nice to be told where to go. I had no idea. I walked across the line, I'm looking around, what do I do now? Where do I go? I didn't know. And the reason was because everybody that was meeting and greeting was surrounding either a 50-mile runner or a 100-mile runner, I don't know which. They had the block on there, and there was 4 or 5 people surrounding him, talking to him. Fine, but it would have just been nice for someone to say, "Oh, you go and get your medal from over there." Because I walked out at the paddock and had to go back, because I walked out without my medal. I didn't know where to go. So while it was nice in the comments to be said, "Stop saying it's just, and stop saying it's only," but do me a favour, when people cross that line, treat them like it's not just the 25, treat them like they haven't just completed or only completed the 25. That is my only criticism. I get that they were busy, I get they were talking to somebody else. Yeah, I'll leave it there, because I do want to talk about some of the criticism and some of the complaints that sort of hit the social media afterwards. And I find it quite funny, really. I mean, it's ridiculous that, I mean, there was one person that had an anonymous rant about pretty much everything. They complained about the Archangels. The Archangels did a fantastic job. They were always enthusiastic, always cheering you on, always motivating. But this guy didn't think so, or this person, I don't know whether it's a bloke or they were anonymous, they didn't think so. They thought the Archangels were surly and disinterested and unhelpful. They also complained about the facilities at the aid stations. Now I can only talk about the 2 aid stations that I hit, so Godrevy and Port something or other, can't remember the name of it. And I thought they were well equipped, they were well stocked. Again, the angels there were helpful, making sure that you was aware of what was available there, filling your bottles if you need, if you were doing something else, they quite happily fill your bottle for you, or bring you food to where you were working. And there were plenty of space there as well. This person complained of lack of space. Godrevy aid station was massive. There were benches outside. It was a nice warm day, so didn't have to worry about that. And talking about the conditions of the day, it was like it is now. It was bright and sunny for most of it. It was cold, but that's what you want when you're running. You're going to generate heat, so you want that. But they complained about the state of the ground. Now, they were obviously one of the later starters, so I think they might have been wave 3 in the 25, because we were right at the back of everybody else, or they might have been wave 2 in the 50s. Their complaint was things like they had to go through conditions like the mud I've just shown you that had already been churned up by all these other runners, and you just think, do you know what, it's a winter endurance race, and it's on the coastal path, and there's going to be a couple of thousand people running it. Suck it up. You know, you signed up for this, you paid good money to enter this race and participate in it. You must have expected this, you must have expected to be like this. And it's all very well and good saying, well, we was at the back of the race. If the weather that was there 24 hours before or 24 hours after had hit on that day, hardly anybody would have finished. It was horrendous. The rain the following day and the rain the previous day was ridiculous. You couldn't see. You'd have been sliding down the hills on a water slide. So to be complaining about stuff like that, I think is just silly. It's silly. To have a go at the Archangels and the organisation, I think, is disingenuous. I think that person just had a bad race and they wanted to vent, and they did it on a public forum, on a race where people are just going to, well, laugh at them. And it feels bad, because you don't want to laugh at anybody. It was a tough race. It was a really tough race, and I have nothing but respect for anybody that completed it or even took part in it. Anybody that stood on that start line and went when they were told to go has my utmost respect, whatever the distance. It was awesome. I have nothing else to compare it to. I can't say whether Mud Crew did it better than UTMB. I don't know. It was absolutely my first race. I've got nothing to compare it to. It won't be my last. Finally, things that I've learned before, during and after the race. Training wise, I've just done a little run, and the only thing that's still hurting me even now a week after the race is my hips, so I know I need to pay more attention to that. Happy with my base training. I ran out of time really before I realised how important the strength training was, so more strength training, get stronger glutes, get stronger quads for those hills. Base, like I say, distance wise, I'm quite comfortable with that. I'm going to just carry on pushing the distance, because I'm hoping to do the 50 next year. By no means is that a certainty yet. Nutrition, eating, I've really got to practice eating on the go. I struggled holding down solid food, even at the aid stations, just looking at the solid food there, and there was a lot of it, lots of variety there. Just made me feel sick looking at it. Not as sick as I felt once I put down that 9th or 10th gel. So I really do need to practice eating solid food while I'm out running. For the race, take a bigger bag and carry more kit. Now that sounds a bit counterintuitive, because obviously you want to go lighter, but what would have been really useful for me at that last aid station was taking my wet top off and putting a dry top on. But I didn't take a second dry kit with me. I had this one, but this is something to go over, so I still had my wet kit on underneath. And I know just from experience of while camping, that just getting that wet kit off, putting that dry kit on is a game changer. It makes a massive difference. I wasted so much time at the second aid station because everything was sort of crammed into my little race pack, and I had to strip everything out and then sort of obviously put it all back in to get to my torch and stuff like that. And if I'd have just set it out a bit better, I'd have been much quicker. I wouldn't have got into the cold so much, and I wouldn't have lost my place in. Up until that point, I was holding like position number 6. I was 6th in my age group, and by the time I finished I was 20th. So at that aid station, just all the people I'd been ahead of, they passed me. I know I did say that the role for me was to complete, not compete, but yeah, pissed off about that. I started too quick, and then I didn't go hard enough towards the end of the race. The fact that I could run the next day, in my mind, thinks I didn't work hard enough. And the fact that I know I went off too quick at the start because I was feeling it sort of in the middle of the race. It sounds really weird that I'm complaining that I went off too quick and then saying I didn't work hard enough towards the end of the race, but that's the way I feel, so I need to sort of practice that a bit more. And what's next for me? I've got the Birmingham half marathon coming up, so my training switches to a more of a balance now between speed and distance. I know I've got the distance. 13 miles is not a difficult distance for me to run. Me now, I need to start looking at the timing. I want to come in under 2 hours, so I'm going to do some more speed training, some more intervals. If you want to see that, hit like and subscribe. I didn't know what interval training was. I didn't know what it was for, and I'm not going to be the only one. So videos I'm going to be putting out now will be showing what they are, how to do them, how they impact. Right, that's me done. I have got to start moving again, so feeling the cold. It's time to start running. Oh, let's get out of here.